Bonjour, merci pour votre compréhension et bienvenue à toutes et à tous.
The latest findings from the World Justice Project have sparked renewed debate in Zambia over the effectiveness of the United Party for National Development, UPND, in tackling corruption. Contrary to expectations set during the 2021 electoral campaign, the data reveals that Zambia's performance on the Absence of Corruption Index has stagnated under President Hakainde Hichilema's administration. Between 2021 and 2024, the country's score hovered between 0.36 and 0.38, indicating minimal progress in curbing corrupt practices. This revelation is particularly striking, given that the average corruption score during the tenure of former President Edgar Lungu and the Patriotic Front (PF) was comparatively better, with only Lungu's final year in office registering a lower score than the current administration. These findings challenge the prevailing narrative that the UPND would usher in a new era of transparency and accountability. When the UPND assumed power, it did so on a platform that promised to restore democratic norms, uphold the rule of law, and dismantle entrenched systems of graft. However, the World Justice Project's metrics suggest that these promises have not translated into measurable improvements. Analysts point out that while the PF government was widely criticized for its handling of public resources and allegations of high-level corruption, the current administration has yet to demonstrate a significant departure from those patterns. Critics argue that the UPND's anti-corruption rhetoric has not been matched by institutional reforms or prosecutorial vigor. Key sectors such as procurement, fuel distribution, and fertilizer supply have come under scrutiny, with opposition figures and civil society organizations raising concerns about opaque processes and potential conflicts of interest. Emmanuel Mwamba, a prominent PF figure, has publicly stated that corruption under the UPND is worse than during the PF era, citing the Transparency International Zambia Corruption Perception Index as supporting evidence. While such claims may be politically motivated, they resonate with a growing segment of the population that feels disillusioned by the lack of tangible change. The broader implications of this report extend beyond partisan politics. For Zambia to improve its standing on global governance indices, there must be a concerted effort to strengthen oversight mechanisms, empower anti-corruption agencies, and ensure judicial independence. The stagnation in the corruption score suggests systemic inertia that cannot be resolved through political will alone. It requires structural transformation, capacity building, and a culture of accountability that permeates all levels of government. Furthermore, the report raises questions about the metrics used to assess corruption and whether they fully capture the nuances of governance in Zambia. While numerical scores provide a snapshot, they may not reflect the complexities of enforcement, public perception, or media freedom. Nonetheless, the consistency of low scores over multiple years under different administrations points to a persistent challenge that transcends individual leadership. In conclusion, the World Justice Project's findings serve as a sobering reminder that electoral promises must be backed by sustained action. As Zambia continues its democratic journey, the fight against corruption remains a critical benchmark for progress. Whether under PF or UPND, the need for transparency, integrity, and institutional resilience is more urgent than ever. Only through comprehensive reforms and genuine political commitment can Zambia hope to reverse the trend and build a governance model that earns both domestic and international trust.
And on the second topic, we will talk about Kenyan manufacturers have formally approached the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa (COMESA) Secretariat to address long-standing trade disputes with Zambia, raising concerns over persistent barriers that continue to hinder the free flow of goods between the two member states. This petition marks a renewed effort by private sector actors in Nairobi to seek resolution through regional mechanisms, amid growing frustration over what they describe as non-tariff restrictions imposed by Lusaka on key Kenyan exports. The move comes against the backdrop of escalating tensions surrounding the importation of edible oils, particularly palm-based products, which Zambian authorities have flagged for alleged quality and regulatory inconsistencies. Kenyan producers, however, argue that these measures amount to protectionism and violate the spirit of regional integration enshrined in COMESA's trade protocols. The dispute has simmered for several years, with intermittent attempts at dialogue failing to yield a sustainable solution. Zambian officials maintain that their actions are guided by public health and consumer safety concerns, citing the need to ensure that imported goods meet national standards. Yet Kenyan stakeholders contend that such justifications mask deeper economic interests aimed at shielding local industries from competition. The petition submitted to COMESA calls for a transparent arbitration process and urges the bloc to enforce compliance with its trade facilitation framework. It also highlights the economic toll of the impasse, noting that Kenyan exporters have suffered significant losses due to delayed shipments, rejected consignments, and increased logistical costs. From a Zambian perspective, the issue touches on broader questions of industrial policy and regional equity. Zambia has invested heavily in its domestic agro-processing sector, and policymakers are wary of market distortions that could undermine local value chains. The country's trade ministry has previously expressed openness to dialogue, but insists that any resolution must respect national sovereignty and regulatory autonomy. COMESA, headquartered in Lusaka, finds itself in a delicate position, tasked with balancing the interests of its diverse membership while upholding the principles of free trade and economic cooperation. The bloc has faced criticism in recent years for its limited enforcement capacity and slow response to interregional disputes. Analysts suggest that the Kenyan petition could serve as a test case for COMESA's dispute resolution mechanisms, potentially setting a precedent for how similar conflicts are handled in the future. It also underscores the need for stronger institutional frameworks to manage trade tensions in a rapidly evolving regional landscape. With Kenya and Zambia playing pivotal roles in COMESA's economic architecture, the outcome of this standoff could have ripple effects across the bloc. Stakeholders from both countries are watching closely, hoping that constructive engagement will prevail over unilateral action. As the region grapples with the twin challenges of integration and industrialization, the resolution of this trade feud may offer valuable lessons on balancing national interests with collective progress.